Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing here today? I just realized I've got this on the wrong thing. Staring at the right thing. Okay, there we are. Staring at the screen where everything was time delayed. How is everyone doing here this fine Tuesday afternoon? Evening, I guess now, technically. I mean, it's 7 o'clock here in Seattle. Today we're gonna do, frankly, probably some more drawing. I did some last week. I've done a little over the weekend. I've been working on other things. And I just need to keep putting in time on this map. So setting aside an hour on Tuesday just to be like, yeah, go work on the map, Demi, is a useful bit of my time. And I figured I'd do that with all of you. I'm still working on just the central core of Wyrmbone right now. But I'm over halfway done. And I think we're going to be getting close to the point where, you know, we can start mapping the other districts of the city. So, you know, I'm going to take you over to that. You won't see my head in this because I'm going to be recording it. But let me take you over to the map itself, and I'll kind of explain what we're up to, and then I'll get to drawing. So, this is what the map currently looks like. Now, that doesn't look like a lot because it's not. But there's a lot of detail in that little section. This is probably the same number of buildings as much of the rest of the town will be put together. The Black Arch district is very tightly packed, whereas the other parts of the town are much more loose and kind of open. So you can see some of that by turning on some of the, you know, here, if I turn on the sketch layer, come here, there it is. You can see the other districts here. You've got the district up here. This is Gemtree. This is where all the rich people live. This is the Jumbles. This is the part that burned down after the dragon attacked, and as such was built with a more regimented pattern. And then out here you have the loose collective that will be the fields. None of these lines should be considered final right now. The only things that are final are things in black. Everything below that is just a sketch. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But you can, you know, if you look closely, you can see how the sketch did translate into the map you're seeing up here. So that, you know, that's how it kind of comes together. I tend to use the sketch to kind of lay down some guidelines, some guideposts to plot out the area. Nothing worse than drawing a map and realizing that you're you know, let me move my microphone here. Nothing like drawing a map and realizing halfway through that you're you know, out of space on one side. I'm doing this digitally, so that's not really an issue, but I do like to plan things out. So this is designed to be a half-page map. All right, let me go ahead and turn this off. Turn that back on. So yeah, we're going to get to doing some drawing here in just a minute. I was going to open up a beverage before I get started here. I've got my Wyrmbone tablet in front of me. That you can't really see it in the shot. It's here. The big giant drawing tablet sits in front of me here on the computer. I just push everything back and put the tablet in front. Pretty easy. I figured I'd also spend some of today talking about the challenges of making RPG products, because it is a long and convoluted process. That is frankly taking up a lot of my time and effort right now. And while it does lead us towards a final product, it's a lot of work that doesn't amount to much other than process and getting all the ducks in a row and getting contracts and orders and doing negotiations and chatting back and forth with emails and stuff. So we'll chat a bit about that here as we go. I'll also answer questions. You won't see a chat on the screen, but I have the chat up in front of me. So if you throw up some questions, or if you've got any questions about what's going on, feel free to throw them my way. All right, well, let's get started. Back here. All right, so yeah, when I left off with this, I didn't have kind of all these top and bottom districts done. They've been put in, and I really only have these western parts to do here. So, you know, make good progress. We might even be able to wrap some of these up here today. So let's get to it. I realized a better way to be doing courtyards and stuff, working with parallelism from the outside edges, which is certainly very useful. So we're just gonna square some things off here. Level off a few of these. It's okay if some of these streets get wider. They were intentionally kind of narrow to begin with. And I've got kind of a big void here, so I'm gonna want to make some hollows in it. Because it's just too dense. The thing about buildings, right, is especially, you know, medieval buildings, folks are gonna want ventilation. And having a building with no access to outside air is pretty terrible. Like, this persisted all the way up to, you know, modern era. It's why you see U-shaped courtyard buildings. It's so that they're, you know, or buildings with a kind of a hollow in the middle. It's so that folks can have open windows and be able to exchange air and get sunlight and yada yada. So I'll take this in here a bit. So when designing super dense stuff like this, I like to keep that in mind. This part is based off the only truly medieval city that I've been to, which was York. I've been to York in England, and if you haven't been, York is a delight. But it has a very classic medieval core to the city that is surrounded, still to this day, surrounded by walls that you can walk. It has, I believe it has the UK's only working barbican still in existence. So that's pretty cool. But the coolest thing to me was that the cities look like, you know, the city streets look like Lankmar, right? I mean, a lot of these fantasy cities were actually based off of towns like York. So when it comes to making courtyards, one of the things that I've realized I should do, or can do, is draw lines that are parallel to the outside. Now on this one, it's actually pretty easy because some of these are parallel with what's on the other side as well. So this is going to be a pretty easy courtyard to make. Just trying to make kind of an interesting shape right now. I'll fill in building details as we go along. So, yeah, this is coming together nicely. Now, I probably want to create a way, like a narrow alley for folks to get in and out of this. And I might even want to make one from both sides. This is part of like urban planning turning into adventure locale, right? Being able to kind of dodge through this neighborhood. You know, setting an encounter here. It's going to be really important in part 2 of Wulfrun's Fate, because I have decided that the culmination of the adventure is going to happen during the Eventide celebration. So every year there is kind of an Eventide celebration, and it's a combination, think of it like a combination Halloween, Day of Remembrance, and Thanksgiving. Kind of all into one. And it's a 3-day festival, and each day kind of works like one of those 3 themes. So the first day is kind of like Halloween, the second day is kind of like a Day of Remembrance, and then the third day is a day kind of like Thanksgiving, where people give, you know, thanks and have a big feast to celebrate the return of the light. Because it was a pretty traumatic thing to have the sun disappear for 3 weeks, and when it finally did come back, Folks were obviously a little spooked by that, and they commemorated that day. Okay, so this is actually coming along nicely here. So the Eventide festivities are going to happen during part 2 of Wulfrun's Fate. And the best part is there's a new monster in part 2 called a Gaunt. And I'm getting art of the Gaunt. As a matter of fact, I already have it. And it is a terrifying, terrifying creature with kind of like a human with wrong proportions. And they are going to be walking around freely on the first night of Eventide because it's Halloween and no one's going to suspect that they're actually a monster. And they are going to be hunting the PCs because they do not want their mission to succeed under any circumstances. And then, as the festivities continue, they're going to eventually kidnap a new ally that the PCs make. On the second night, they're going to kidnap this ally, and then that will lead into the final showdown of part 2, which is into the Gaunt's lair, which is in the sewers. So there's going to be some sewer fun. Nice to say, I need my city map, because without it, kind of hard to have a city adventure. So I'm working on this as quick as I can. It's not going to be done for the first session on Wednesday, or Thursday. But the upside is I don't think it needs to, because I still have to do leveling up for both groups. And I still have to do downtime for both groups. And once I do all that stuff, I think I'm only going to have time to kind of do the intro, which isn't really going to need the city map. See there? That's coming along. From formless to blocks of buildings. Look at that. There's dozens and dozens of buildings here in this central core. I mean, Wyrmbone's a town of several thousand, so you know, with some of these being businesses, others being guild halls and stuff like that, I don't think this is an outrageous number of buildings. At some point in time, I'll need to do a check just to make sure that I am indeed... Nope, wrong thing. Come here. I'll have to do a check to make sure that I'm not kind of off base on my town's population based on the map I've drawn. That's always a bit of a trick, to be honest. Because it's a rough estimate, right? And you have to assume that, you know, each building has, you know, on average 2 people. Some are going to be 1, some are going to be 4, some are going to be 8, some are going to be none because they're businesses. So there's that. Actually, I'm not... Kind of a weird gate. On the edge here. All right, so go ahead and get. Always very tricky here. That's close. So yeah, This week, honestly, I've been mired in some negotiations, some contracts, and just trying to figure out some scheduling stuff. Some of the least fun bits of game design, to be honest, is just like figuring out a schedule for things. I do that and that. I can create the edges of this building without probably work. The void spaces can be whatever shape you want them to be, which is great, because they don't have to follow the rules of buildings. So yeah, I've been mired in scheduling and, you know, getting some ducks in a row about, you know, trying to figure out pricing and negotiating with an editor, and you know, just kind of getting things set up so that I can actually sell Wulfrun's Fate as an adventure, right? You know, even if it's just, I'm actually going to add a freestanding building in the middle of this courtyard, because that's kind of fun. I don't think I got too many of those in this map at all so far. I'm going to have a lot of them soon, but thus far, not many. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Just add a happy little building over here. So yeah, you know, when it comes to, you know, creating a product, you know, negotiating with folks and figuring out fair rates, one thing that I've realized is really important to me on this project is making sure that I'm, you know, dealing with everyone fairly, that I'm giving everyone a fair rate based on their efforts, right? You know, the editor I'm talking with is a friend, and they were like, well, you know, I know you can't afford X, Y, or Z because this is a new kind of project, and, you know, but I'll toss in some stuff for free. And I was like, no, don't do that, right? I mean, I want to get this out, and, you know, I want to get part 1 out and see how it does. And hopefully, right, the sales will be there so that I can start paying for more of their services, right? You know, that way I can be paying them what they're worth, you know, instead of just kind of shortchanging them because it's new, right? I don't want to do that. As someone who's done plenty of that sort of work myself, trying to decide if that's right. It might be. Hold on. Nope. Like, I know how easy it is to be like, great, this'll help me get my project done. That's the best thing, except for that it's not a great way to do business. I want everybody to feel like they got, you know, properly compensated for their effort and stuff. So, you know, was the scheduling productive? Yeah, it was productive. I mean, you know, I've got a better sense of where I'm at and, you know, kind of where things need to go in the next few weeks. I mean, ideally, right, I would like to try and get the first part of Wulfrun's Fate up by Gen Con, but I'm starting to think that I'm not sure there's much of a point to that. It's going to be a digital product, not a physical one. So having it out at Gen Con doesn't really mean anything. So, you know, why bother pushing it too far? I also came to realize that the art piece I ordered for the cover is really the cover for the entire adventure, and not really a great cover for the first part, because it shows something that isn't even in the first part. It in fact shows the Gaunt attack late at night on the streets of Wyrmbone, right? And that's not very useful to the folks who are going to be picking up this new PDF. So, you know, I might need to order another piece of art. So honestly, you know, I'm starting to let go the kind of fanciful dream of releasing this by Gen Con and instead settling for a few weeks after, when frankly I don't have to compete with all the news from Gen Con, right? You know, I can just be my own thing, which is nice. So, you know, yeah, gotta figure it out. And then, you know, I still need to playtest part 2 before that can come out, but, you know, I want to get part 1 out there. It's going to be a standalone 32-pager, and, you know, to make that work, I need a lot of art. I've already bought, you know, a couple $1,000s worth of art for this project, but some of it's for the player's guide, some of it's for later parts of the adventure, you know, and only a couple pieces are for this first part, so I'm actually going back to my artist to get, some headshots and some other pieces for the first part of Wolfran's Fate, right? You know, to get a headshot of Lieutenant Havanok, to get a headshot of the Major Domo. So, yeah. I mean, I do agree, right? Having it be the launch date is Gen Con. And don't get me wrong, I'm still going to push for it. I just don't think I'm going to be able to hit it. Not without some sacrifices that I don't think I should really make. I'm going to have this be this narrow little building nestled against the wall. Yeah, I like that. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, being able to say, hey, at Gen Con, this is out now. The problem is I'm not going to be at Gen Con. So, it's not really that useful to me. I'm going to be on a handful of online panels and stuff, but I'm not going to be at the show. I decided not to go this year. As much as that pains me. So I think, you know, when it comes to Black Arch here, just being in Black Arch is, you know, it's neither good nor bad. It's like being in Old City, right? It's the dense, congested part of town. The nobles think it's you know, smelly and old and grimy, but it has its own kind of old charm. It's filled with old secrets and old buildings. You know, plenty of the places in here have, you know, cellars that connect to forgotten levels of this city, right? Because it's been built on top of itself, you know, a half dozen times. So, you know, the thought here is that Black Arch isn't exactly the nicest district. That's not what it's all about. But it is the one with kind of the most charm. I don't know. I find old cities to be delightful. I like old cities quite a bit, so maybe I'm just biased. Getting close to being able to kind of line out the entire rest of this. I should probably go and get these gates in down here. Big enough to kind of measure out like the other ones? Maybe. Might need to add a little bit more back onto that. Especially on this one. So I've been doing a lot of contracting, and there's been some negotiation this week, and, you know, I also need to start thinking about platform, right? You know, where am I going to sell this? The most obvious one, the one that everybody knows, is drive-through. But drive-through takes a pretty good chunk of the cost. They take like 35%, which is rough. You know, that's something you got to account for. That's a pretty big hit. But you kind of can't. You can't ignore drive-through, right? You can't be like, oh well, I guess I just won't be there because they take too big of a cut. They're by far the largest marketplace. I put a couple things in there. I'm gonna have to go even out. That's looking pretty straight. Dealing with pixels here on a map that's going to be at a 300 DPI resolution. So, right, like, that dot is like 4x4. And it is going to be in a square of dots that is 300 by 300. So, it's going to be very, very, very tiny. So I don't know about Etsy. I don't have an Etsy store. It's not a terrible idea. Itch.io is actually really good. Because they generally only take like 10%. But Itch is starting to be more well known. And you can actually set it as low as 0. You can, on Itch, you can set it so that Itch gets nothing. So that all of the money goes to you. But, you know, it's their platform, so I think that's kind of a jerky thing to do. Doesn't mean you can't, but... One thing I have not done on here is gone and put in support buttressing on the outer wall, which is something that is going to have to be there at some point. Yeah, I don't know about it. I'm not sure. I'll be honest, I haven't investigated it at all. This is the first time I've even thought about it. But I have to investigate. You know, then of course, I'm not gonna put this in Pathfinder Infinite because it's not Galarian content. So I don't really feel like it's a good fit for that. And frankly, that ups the take to almost 50%. Or hell, it might actually even be 50%, which is, frankly, for my margins, that's very detrimental. At some point in time, I might put like the Penumbrist up there or something, just stripped down and just the class. But I think that's about all I can consider on that front. The buildings in here are all pretty straightforward to deal with. I should probably do a zoom out and figure out where my wall buttresses are going to be. So let me zoom out here. I'm going to get a sense of how far they are in other spots. So we're looking at about here. Oh, nope, wrong tool. Do. That's about right. Okay, let me zoom back in. Straighten these up a bit here. There we go. That's pretty good. Okay. Let's see. What else we need to do? Let's get something in here. I like how that's kind of coming together. Oh yeah, no, dairy's great. Yeah, I haven't visited Derry, but it's, you know, on the list. In pictures. Looks really cool. Always a big fan of giving more space around the gates. Makes it easier for folks to crowd around there and, you know, do whatever it is they're gonna do. Guards to have checkpoints or whatever. I feel like I'm getting close to being able to drop all the lines in here. This is getting very close. I do wonder if I want... Not quite. Not quite. Let's see. Too narrow. Oh, I like it. That's like a little crawlway. Nice. Nice. All right. All right. So let me go and swap over to gray lines and just start putting these down and defining buildings. Let me start with some of the weird ones. Oop, nope, wrong tool. Come here, you. There we go. Not gonna lie, I tend to draw building shapes based on how the roof lines can work. That's a esoteric way of approaching this, but simple roof lines are really important, as it turns out. If your roof lines are not simple, the places where they are super complex and meet in awkward spots, that is where the roof will fail, and so you don't want to do that. Make some of these very small. Some of these really these really tiny back alley places should be very, very, very small. The bigger buildings should be clustered towards the main streets, and the back streets should have a bunch of really tiny buildings. Because in this, I am considering the history of Black Arches, right? This community was for a while the only community. This was the town, right? Because when they first got here, there were a bunch of old elven ruins on this site, and they started occupying those ruins and fortifying them and fixing them and turning them into buildings. But, you know, as they did more and more of that, the elvenness disappeared, and it was slowly replaced by ever-crowding buildings. So they built a wall around it, because there was already part of a wall. And over the years, they just crowded it full of buildings. And that's kind of how a lot of these kind of super tightly congested kind of city spaces work, is that they're just building after building after building gets built on every bit of open space. You have to remember, you know, there aren't like zoning laws, and who owns what land is a real difficult to answer question. Oh, that's a bit of a problem. Those do not line up. Let me go. Nope, wrong tool. Feels like the wall on one side is a little thicker than the other. Alright, so yeah, no, it is like medieval Italy. As a matter of fact, Lucca, the site of a annual large game convention, game and comic convention, is a city just like this, where the inside of it is just packed with buildings, wall to wall, tightly built, because they were using up as much space as possible on the inside walls. So Black Arches started like that, right? You know, it's a community built within kind of a wall that was established. And everybody wants to be inside the wall, because that's where it's safe. You know, from, I don't know, angry bears. And bandits and, you know, foreign invaders and stuff like that. So, building kind of weird. Weird building. Weird. Wait a moment. Buildings in the back like that are great places for, like, oh yeah, that's the poisoner's shop. Gotta know what alley to go down. Otherwise, you are not gonna find it. Alright. So, I'm starting to like this. This is starting to feel done down here. Let me shift over to this quadrant over here. Get some more of this done. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, so, you know, Wyrmbone starts as an elven city, right? The elves abandon it. Goblins, humans show up sometime later, you know, several hundred years later, reclaim the ruins, start building their town inside the walls, and eventually, you know, the town gets big enough, wealthy enough, attracts enough people that it starts spilling outside of its walls. People are like, well, you know what? There is no more room inside the town itself, so let's go outside. And there's two ways that that's going to happen. The first way is, you know, the rich people will build another wall and use that to start planning larger estates and fancy places, and then the poor folks will just end up outside the walls and hope nothing bad happens, right? And that's kind of what happens in Wyrmbone. And eventually, that area outside the city where folks are just living unprotected becomes so populous that they build a wall around that. And the process repeats itself. And that's how a lot of these cities actually expanded, right? You know, they had unwalled areas. There was eventually enough people living out there that they wanted to keep safe, so they walled it in, right? And then the process just keeps going. Now, nothing's ever going to be quite as dense as that first part, because that is where, you know, folks will build to maximum density. What? All right, there we go. Damn it. Come back here. The upside to this drawing tablet is it has a bunch of programmable hotkeys on the side of it, so I can just swap between, you know, like my drawing pen, my erasing tool, and a handful of other useful tools very quickly. But sometimes if you're not paying attention, you hit the wrong button or don't press it hard enough, or so yeah. So there we go. That's that entire section. So now all we have left is this one little western piece. That's not bad. Got a few more minutes. Might as well keep cutting away at it. I feel like I'm nearly done with this district, which is good. I still need to do the keep itself. Can make that work? Yeah. Yeah, and nothing protects you from dragonfire, right? So when the dragon came to town... So, at the time when the dragon actually came to Wyrmbone, it was called Elfend at that time. The town itself, you know, pretty populous. You had the walled-in kind of nobles district of Gemtree. You had Black Arches, and you had the what was at that time the fields. But when the dragon came, it burned down most of the fields, which then was rebuilt and called the Tumbles, and then a new field's kind of sprung out outside of that. So, you know, Dragonfire, as it turns out, is the great urban renewal engine, in that you must renew the urban area because it's been burned down and is gone. I wonder if I should make a freestander back here as well. I do have one right there, so maybe not. I don't know. I'm gonna go with no. But I will do something interesting. Alright. This freestanding building right here is actually a famous shop, and is freestanding for a very specific reason, because most people assume the shop is going to fall down. It's called the Teetering Tower, and it is a bunch of floors built on top of each other in kind of a haphazard fashion that nobody assumes is going to be standing for much longer. So there is that. Gotta be honest, I've kind of gotten into a groove on this, and it is going much faster now, which is nice. Early, I was kind of working out technique. The first 2 hours were very slow by comparison. This is going quite a bit faster now. But still, By the time it's all said and done, just the Black Arches district alone will have taken me several hours. But that's not surprising, because that's a lot of detail. That's a ridiculous amount of detail, especially at 300 DPI, right? It's going to be displayed, you know, that's a half-page illustration. So it's not going to be displayed with exactly, you know, this level of detail. You're not going to see that. So, there we go. Let me go ahead and center this up here. So there we go. That's about all I got time for here today. I've got another stream starting here in just 10 minutes, folks. I want to thank you all for stopping by and hanging out to listen to me ramble and draw a bit. I know these have been a bit low-key because the adventure isn't really progressing right now while I'm busy writing it. I've kind of already given folks a lot of the lowdown on what the adventure is going to contain. More of that will happen as more of it comes together here in the next week or two. So I do expect... that we'll kind of get back to more kind of conversational, chatty Tuesdays here in the near future. Is the keep next or a different district? No, the keep is in this district. It is, you know, it's, you know, this big space right here. I'm not sure you can see it. Well, here, I can just... Sorry about that. That was me hopping and pressing the wrong button. As it turns out, the back button is also a hotkey for my Stream Deck, so that's fun. So yeah, the keep is in here. It's in that area there. So yeah, it is part of this district. I will draw it, but I'm gonna want it to interface with the river that's going to be driving past the town there to the east. And cutting through the field, so I'll want to figure that out. So that's all part of that overall process. All right, folks. Yes, it turns out the draw button is a hotkey for Photoshop, but if I'm on the wrong window, it does different things. All right, so there we are, everybody. I want to thank you all for watching. I gotta get set up for the next stream. I hope you will all join me over there for some Wrath of the Righteous fun. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.